Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to the Sweetwater Minute. We have a special guest here today. This is James Young from Aston Microphones.
Hi, man.
Pleasure to see you.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks for coming in from all the way over in England.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Yeah,
it's nice
pleasure.
to be here.
So I'm intrigued by the whole story of your company, and you're really coming on strong with the different microphone models and things that you're coming out.
Yeah.
Give us a little bit of a background, how you got into what you're doing in the company.
Well, I've been in microphones, as you know, I think for getting on for 18 years now. I had another company that I was involved with for about 12 years, and I was afforded an opportunity to start again and do my own thing. So basically, we now do UK manufacturing. The company that I worked with before, we were doing manufacturing in China, and I always wanted to get into doing microphones in the UK. Mm-hmm. Because there isn't, if you think about it, there isn't really a UK mainstream brand. There are a couple of little boutique-y things that have been done over the years, but nobody is really being the voice of the UK market. So we had this, I kind of tongue-in-cheek say opportunity, but it really is an amazing opportunity that for such an influential music market that me and the team of people, around me have got this chance to actually, be the guys that are the UK mic brand. It's pretty cool.
Right, that's very cool. Yeah. That's very cool. So I always wonder when you see a new company emerge, did you start the company with ideas of the microphones you were going to make, or did you start the company and then say, hey, we need to come up with a microphone to make? How does that part of the process work?
Yeah, well, we were in an interesting situation when we started Aston. We were kind of hard on our uppers, and we had to think on our feet because we were starting from scratch in a quite abrupt fashion.
Right.
So basically, when we sat down, we'd had this outpouring of support from people in the industry that we'd worked with for many years, saying, you guys have built this amazing brand before. Why don't you go and do it again and show the world what you can do, make it your own brand? Right. So we had the situation where we didn't really have any money. We had a lot of expertise, an awful lot of years in the business, and we had a lot of support from other people in the business. And we were trying to think of ways of, how can we do this again? Because we didn't have a big manufacturing plant. We didn't have lots of money to put into it. And actually the turnkey moment was realizing that all of these producers and engineers that were saying to us, guys, if there's anything we can help you do to get back on your feet, then we will. We realized that these are the people that have got the real ears in the industry. My ears aren't bad. I've been in the music industry for quite a long time. Sure. But still, I'm not the guy that's making #1 records all around the world, as a daily job. Mm-hmm. So we were in this situation where suddenly all of these people were offering to help, and we thought, well, hang on a minute, who better in the world to tell us how a product should sound than these guys? Now, it's a really interesting thing that in every company that I've ever been involved with, not just in microphones, but in other companies that I've distributed in the past and outside of this industry as well, product development is always a combination of sales, marketing, and engineering, mm-hmm. right? And the sales guys want one product that does everything and costs 99 cents. Okay? Right. And the marketing guys want one product that does the one thing that's the best in the world, or maybe preferably nobody else does that, so they have a single USP. And then the engineers want to build space rockets and they don't care how much they cost. So you get this, you always end up with the same kind of push and pull between these branches of the company. And what happens at the end of that tends to be homogenization. You tend to have compromise. So this is why you see an awful lot of products from very different companies ending up looking kind of the same, sounding kind of the same, having the same kind of feature set. That's why. Right. And we kind of broke the mold with that, really. I mean, even compared to the other stuff we'd done before, because we completely separated out engineering and marketing and sales. So the sound engineering was done by a panel of, in the case of Stealth, 92 top industry professionals. Right. When we first started, it was 33 basically people that we'd worked with for many years that wanted to help out. And the engineering side of it, the actual mechanical engineering, we employed an architect rather than a mic designer, which is why we've come up with these amazing materials and very novel ways of actually building the microphones. And we kept sales and marketing well out of the picture, basically. So the sound engineering part of it, we have a panel of people which is still now called the Aston 33, because the original panel had 33 people in it. And the unusual thing about what we did is that that team of engineers, producers and artists were involved in the product development right from day one. And normally what you have is this kind of homogenization process, the compromise. You get a product nearly at the end of it, and then that company will put that product out for people to check and say, have we got it right? Are there any things we need to change? which is beta testing, right? You know that.
Sure, right.
And then you get a sign off. So those people, those experts, don't usually get involved until the end of the process. And the people that are designing the products are in-house engineers. So by having these people work on the sound development in double-blind listening tests right from the beginning of the process, they were choosing what kind of capture we use. They were choosing whether we put a transformer in, what kind of transformer, not by scientific approach, but by listening. Right. We would make iterations of the microphones. They would listen in blind tests, and then they would guide the direction. And we said right at the beginning of the process, we're not going to interfere. We are genuinely going to take our hands off it. We'll do all the mechanical bit and the kind of electronics. Whatever this group of people tell us to do, that's what we're going to do. And the beauty of it is that we often have people coming to us and saying, how the heck did you guys build mics that sound this good for that little money and do it in the UK? Mm-hmm. And the answer I always give is because of the Aston panel. Those are the guys that did it for us, because they're using $3,000 to $5,000 mics every day of their lives. They know what they should sound like. So we didn't have to make them, we don't have to put lots of expensive components in. We just needed people to guide the process.
Right.
So
that's very cool. Yeah. I was checking out some of the people who were on the panel, the Aston 33, and it interested me that it is certainly high-end engineers and very experienced engineers, but it's also classical guitarist David Russell and singer-songwriters and guitar players and different musicians that you've brought in there as well.
Absolutely.
And I like that you've involved the musician aspect of it, because they hear differently than, or we hear differently than an engineer who's looking for certain things. So the breadth of the panel, I think was
and cross-genre as well.
Right. We're very. I think that's just a great approach.
Yeah.
Because it gives you a versatile product, and yet it's still tuned to satisfy all those different wide-ranging people. And
we've been very fortunate. Out of the adversity of the situation we came out of, we've kind of had a lot of luck in decisions that we've made as well, because it was a good decision to put that panel of people together and go, this is how we're going to develop it. But actually we had, right from the beginning, quite a varied group of people from various different backgrounds, from classical to heavy rock, and as you say, producers, front of house guys as well, because not many pro audio companies that are developing products take front of house guys as seriously as they do producers and studio engineers. And there's this thing that actually, when you involve that group of people, they're kind of really pleased that you've actually taken notice. It's a really important part of the industry.
Right. And
by getting them involved in the sound of the products, I think it's one of the big reasons that our mics have crossed over so well into live. I mean, I can't think, maybe, the 414 is a mic that's really crossed over from studio into live and broadcast and everything. I can't really think of another product that's done that. And that's a lot of microphones out there in a lot of years.
Right.
But with all of our range, the Origin, the Starlights, the Spirit, which we set out to be studio products, they've gone very successfully into the live market as well. And I think it's because of that eclectic group of people that we've worked with. We've got a good sound that basically will transpose into a different marketplace.
Right. I think the other advantage that your products have is they look different and they're made differently than a lot of the other things. It's not a Me Too product, as you were saying earlier, but even beyond that, there's a lot of innovation that's in there. Talk a little bit about that. For example, with the Origin, the way that the spring is used and some of the different features you have there.
Yeah, again, we had a lot of luck early on. We had to. We had our backs against the wall. We had a decision to make early on. I wanted to build mics in the UK, but that comes at a price, okay? So if we had have simply done, if you look at the mic market, actually what we found was very interesting. The first thing we did was we did an audit of pretty much all of the major mics that were out there. We actually went through nearly 100 brands and picked out several mics from each brand. And what we were looking for early on was differences. We were looking at things that people had done that were clever, or where they'd kind of broken the mold a little bit. And what we discovered was that they were all the same. And if you think about the structure of an SM58, right the way through to U87 and beyond, they're all the same basic structure. They've all got the chassis, they've all got a basket, a mesh head basket, the capsule and the PCB. It's all the same. So we started asking this question, why are all the products the same? Is it because that's the way you have to do it? Or is it just because everybody's gone, well, that's the way it's done, so we've got to do it like that? And it appears that the latter is true. So we were deconstructing it and saying, well, do you have to have a mesh head? Do you have to have the chassis like that? And the answer to those questions are yes, you do, because you need a Faraday cage, so you've got to do those things. But then the next level down is, well, if you've got a mesh head, does it have to be made like that? And the answer to that is no, it doesn't. What you're trying to do with a mesh head is basically a couple of things. You're trying to, well, first of all, you've got to make sure you don't electrocute somebody.
Right.
If you're making a condenser mic, because it's got 48 volts.
That's a good idea, right?
Yeah. And there have been a couple of times in testing where I've kind of got a bit too close to the mic when it hasn't got a shell over it. And it's, poof,
Wow.
It's like being punched in the face.
Yeah, right.
So that's number one. Number two, which people don't think about, is it's Faraday cage. So, you know, in lay terms, that basically is electromagnetic shielding. So it stops you getting a nasty hum over everything. And then you've got, you know, it works as a pop shield, but obviously not very successfully, because nearly every mic in the world you've got to put a pop shield in front of, right? It works to protect the capsule, but not very successfully, because you can quite easily break most mics. You've got to be careful with them. And if you don't break the mic itself, you will certainly, if you drop it, damage the mesh head.
Right.
And that's an expensive job if it's not on an SM58, obviously. But if you've got like a, you know, studio condenser, it's a pretty expensive job to replace the top. So we were thinking, well, there must be better ways of doing this. So our brief was, we need to find ways of manufacturing that use novel materials, that use novel approaches to solving the original problem, not just building what everybody's done, but going right back to the beginning and going, why do we need to build a mic this way? And also to make it not too labour intensive, so that making it in the UK wasn't going to put the price up and up and up and up and up.
Right.
And that's how they ended up being like that. And it's why we employed the services of a very talented architect called Jack Munro, who is Andy Munro's son, who's a very famous acoustician. Now, Jack's not in the audio industry. Well, he wasn't. He is now.
Right.
He is now. But he's an incredibly talented guy. And he used to come in and just bring these weird, oddball stuff in and say, what do you think of this material? And we're like, oh, I don't know about it. And he came in one day with these waveform springs. They're like, if you take them off the mic, they're like a slinky, you know, like a concertina. And he said, what do you think about that? And put it onto a tube, just like a scaffolding pipe tube. And went, how about that as a basic idea for a mic? And we just went, that looks awesome. We have to do that. That looks awesome. Does it work?
Right.
So everything was kind of done back to front. We found materials and ideas first, and then we tried them out. We didn't do what most companies do, which is go, this is how we need to build this mic. How do we get there? It really was, let's throw stuff at it and see what happens. And we've stayed that way right through to this product.
Right.
And that's what's created the innovation, because we've been able to do things that other people just haven't thought of, or that people even say, like the headstock on this. We were told when we did think tank groups with people who are microphone designers, you can't do that headstock, it won't work. So we 3D printed a bunch of headstocks. Guess which one came out top in the blind listening tests, right?
So is that right?
Yeah.
Well, that's crazy.
So sometimes if you kind of, obviously you need to understand the rules, but also kind of going outside them and saying, well, maybe we should just see whether that's true. Yield some really, incredible results.
Right, right. You've also made a real effort to make the microphones and the packaging and the company eco-friendly.
Yeah.
And what's the driving force behind that?
Children,
Yeah.
really. No, I mean, it's a hot topic, and it's important. And we've put a lot of effort into trying to keep the sourcing of materials as local as we can to us. So in the microphones, about 80% of the product materials are actually sourced in the UK. So it's a very small footprint, because the UK is pretty small. You know, we think driving to Edinburgh is a long way because it's 6 hours away, but it's really not that far.
Right.
And we're not shipping backwards and forwards to the Far East all the time in order to build a product. So we're able to localize everything. And then even the cardboard boxes that we put stuff in, they are made in the UK. You know, people would think, oh, well, isn't it cheaper to get that made in China and ship it in bulk to the UK? Yeah.
Right.
Yes, it is. Is it environmentally friendly? No, it's not. And it doesn't cost that much more. That's the thing. You're only talking about, I don't know, 5-10% more on most of the costs of things now that are mass produced, if it doesn't involve labour. So by cutting out that kind of, the mass labour bit of it, the kind of, the stuff where people have got to sit and do everything manually, and designing things cleverly, you can use a lot of locally sourced materials. The cardboard boxes are made in the UK. The guys in our own building assemble everything. We've got a team of people doing that, and they're nearly all, it's like 92% recycled material and 100% recyclable as well. So it's very green. And so are all the components in the products that we do as well. We're very careful about that.
That's awesome. We're, of course, very green here at Sweetwater, so we appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's a very cool thing.
Yeah.
So it's always interesting to look at your products as they come out because there's always those twists. And we talked a little bit about with the Origin, for example. But the Starlight has a couple of interesting things as well. There's a sintered metal head on that and a built-in laser. So where did that idea come from? That's the only microphone I know of with a laser built into it, right?
The different parts of the mic come from different stories. I'm laughing because of where the first one came from. So like all good ideas, the laser started on a slightly drunken night in a New York bar. And there the story begins and ends. Right. No, we were basically, I had a conversation with Paul White from Sound on Sound many years ago when he said to me, wouldn't it be cool if you had a pencil microphone which had a laser on the top so when you pointed it, you could see where you were aiming it. And I'd forgotten about this conversation, and thank you, Paul. I mean, we have thanked him for that, and credited him with that idea. But Alan, my business partner and sales director, were sitting in a New York bar talking about this, and we'd had one too many margaritas, and I went, laser, and he kind of looked at me askance and kind of what. And as we developed the idea, because it sounds a little gimmicky to people at first. But actually, in terms of recallability, it makes things much easier in a recording studio. But where it's really been a big win is for people that are doing things like drum overhead miking, or when they've got to set up a new kit every night after night at a new venue. It's so much easier to do. And I've had so many top end producers, top end engineers say to me, when I first got the Starlight, I really thought the laser was going to be a gimmick, but now I use it all the time.
Right.
So it worked. The sintered head was a complete accident. So it started out as an accident. We were looking for materials because we couldn't use the waveform spring on a pencil mic, obviously, because of the way that maybe not obviously, but because of the way the capsules work. You can't leave an open enclosure like that. You have to have a very kind of controlled airspace around the capsule. And so we were like, okay, well, this is our brand image. What are we going to do? We need something that kind of looks funky and industrial and a bit steampunk. And Jack again turned up one day with these, sintered samples. That's cool. But we kind of looked at these things and went, well, they look solid. They can't possibly pass audio. They do. They do pass audio absolutely transparently. And it turns out it's because they're made of lots of little ball bearings. So there's air spaces between them, and the ball bearings have obviously got, very smooth surfaces.
Right.
The audio travels through them beautifully. But
that's crazy.
But light doesn't, so you can kind of hold this thing, you can't see through it, but it's completely transparent for audio. So we started to try and use the sintered head and discovered very quickly that it was incredibly dependent on the ball bearing size, incredibly dependent on the spacing between them, down to a nanometer level. So even electroplating them changed the sound. The size of it changed the sound. So we started having to experiment a lot with it. And it's why I think, because if you go back to, was it the D190? The AKG mic, is that the one? Anyway, there's an old AKG microphone that's got a kind of gold sintered head on it.
Right.
And part of the reason I think that went out of production a long, long time ago is because the sintering process back in the 70s was really nowhere near as accurate as it is now. And we had to control the accuracy of the size of the ball bearings and the shape of this thing down to a couple of nanometers. And when we got it right, we were able to actually control the sound of the microphone using the sintered head, which is not what we set out to do. But again, it's that whole throw an idea, let's see what we can do with it.
Right.
So we ended up, and then we came down to when we did the panel testing, the blind listening tests, which we haven't really properly discussed yet, but then we found that unlike the Origin of the Spirit, which were relatively easy success stories, because everybody went, that's the right sound, go in that direction. When we did a pencil mic, the panel was absolutely split down the middle. And half the panel wanted a kind of vintage sound, half the panel really liked a very modern, bright sounding pencil microphone. So we went, well, we can't win. How are we going to do this? We can't please everybody. What if we put both sounds on the mic? Hang on, if we're going to do that, let's put a hybrid on as well. So that's where the extra voices came from.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was going to ask you that actually, because that's a very cool feature of that microphone as well. It just makes it so much more versatile.
It does, and it's where we've got people that use Starlights, they tend to use them only in one setting. So you get one engineer that goes, I love it in vintage mode. That's all I ever use. You'll get another guy that says, I love it in modern mode, and that's great. Because we've got a microphone that people can always get the sound that they want out of.
Right, very cool. So you mentioned we've talked about the listening panel and some of the tests and things. How do you actually facilitate those? How do you set up those double blind tests?
Yeah, I think people get the impression maybe that we kind of invite 92 engineers and producers down to our headquarters to come and sit in a room and listen to stuff behind a curtain, which obviously would be pretty difficult to organise.
Right.
So what we do is we have a peer-reviewed process where we try and get consistent recordings between multiple different sources and multiple different microphones. And then we record those audio files, we bind them all up in numbered files so that the panel have no idea at all what they're listening to or which order they're in. I mean, they know they're listening to a guitar, right? They have an acoustic guitar folder, but they have no idea what price point we're going for. We throw competitor mics in there. We'll throw 5, 6 of our own designs in each time. And then the results come back and they vote for them in order of what they prefer. And they also put anecdotal, oh, I really loved number 1 because blah, blah, blah. And I really hated number 7. Don't ever do anything like that. Otherwise we'll never buy your mics again. You know, that kind of stuff. And we compile all the stuff on a big data sheet. The couple of best ones from each round go through to the next round with some more iterations and so on until we get to a point where everybody's going, you've done it. That's the mic. And I think, you know, a lot of people, we've been here today talking to the guys about this, and a lot of your team have said, how the heck have you managed to build something that sounds that good for $400? Right. And the answer is always the same. It's the Aston panel. You know, it's not about throwing expensive components at it. It's about being clever. It's about, you know, working cleverly. Mm-hmm. It's about listening to people that know their job better than anybody else and taking their advice.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah, obviously it works.
It works, yeah. But we're very fortunate. We're very, very fortunate to be in a position where we can work with that many high-end people. I don't know of another company that works that way.
Right. Yeah, that's great. That's great. I love that approach. So we were talking a little bit earlier about this mic, and you've referred to it a few times. This is a Stealth, which is the latest model. Yeah. Tell us what's happening with this microphone.
So this is something that we have just released in January this year. It started out as, look, we had a choice. We'd done some condenser mics, we'd done a pencil mic, and we had to choose whether we were going to do a ribbon or a tube mic or USB or whatever. And I don't want to get into digital. I don't want to chase that, you know, particular dragon right yet. Thank you very much. Right. I'll let somebody younger do that. And we'll do those other things because people want them. But the market that seemed to me, and this is where the marketing does come into it, the market that seemed to me to be the least well catered for was the large format dynamic market. You know, there are a couple of very obvious, you know, these are the guys that do that. We all know who they are. I don't need to mention names, but it's not like condenser mics where you've got thousands, literally thousands of choices. Why not? Dynamic mics are, a lot of people think, better than condensers if they're done right. You know, they're incredibly good, versatile, rugged. You know, it's not just about an SM58, you know, chuck it in a gig bag. I mean, there are some very high-class dynamics out there. So we wanted to go after that market. And the initial brief was, let's make something in that market. That was it. Right. So it started off with capsule choices. And we very, very quickly established there was a very easy couple of stages where we were establishing what capsule we were going to use. And then it got onto, okay, now how's it going to sound? Okay. Right. And then it got more complicated because we threw a lot of instruments at it, because dynamics by their nature, you're going to use them in a lot of different applications with a lot of different instruments. So we had everything from dulcimers and trumpet and saxophone and guitars and vocals and electric guitar, everything, percussion, you name it, we threw it at it. And what we discovered was some really very strong trends with stringed instruments, with female vocals and male vocals, which is a slightly touchy subject, so I'll explain that in a minute. And we got to the point where it's like, okay, we actually need 3 or 4 mics here. We can't build one microphone unless we do something that nobody's done before, which is put multiple voices onto a dynamic mic and also give it a preamp. So it was that testing process with the panel that got us to the point where we actually built this thing. But yeah, anyway, so I digress. So the first thing that kind of popped out was that, and it was very unexpected for me. I know you're a guitarist, me too. And if somebody had said to me 6 months ago even, hey, acoustic guitar, Spanish guitar, really heavy strum guitar, picked, electric guitar cab distorted, jazz guitar, whatever, same microphone, I would have just laughed at them. I would have said, absolutely no way at all. Well, that's what the panel did. In blind tests, when we jumbled up Spanish guitar, electric guitar, acoustic guitars, all different playing styles, and sent out the files, so nobody knew which samples were in the right order at all, when we came back, put it all into a spreadsheet, it was one mic. all the way through that got the highest votes on every kind of guitar. So we had a guitar sound, and it's like, okay, we have to put that on the mic. That's the G setting.
Right.
The male and female vocal things is difficult because people get, it gets politicized, and it's kind of you have to tread carefully with this stuff. I wasn't expecting the results that we got back, but very, very, very clearly, what the panel found, or the results the panel gave to us, was that the mic that was chosen as the best one for female vocals, irrespective of pitch. We're not talking about have you got a high voice or a low voice. Nothing to do with that at all. The one that was chosen best for female vocals was worst for male vocals. And the one that was chosen top for male vocals, which was a completely different sound, came bottom for female vocals. So we were like, okay, we've got to put 2 different vocal settings on this.
Right.
Now, of course, one size does not fit all. You have to listen to the mic and see what suits your voice best. But it isn't something, it's not it's not a kind of agenda thing or anything. It's actually something to do with vocal cord structure and the timbre of the voice, because somebody that's doing male falsetto, they were still choosing the male setting on the mic. In completely random tests.
Right, that's really
so we've got a V1 and a V2, and they're kind of biased in one direction or another. But we give some direction in the manual, but the advice always is, look, listen to what sounds best. You might find the guitar sound sounds best on your voice. I doubt it, but check it out.
You never know, right?
Yeah. And then we thought, well, how we've got 2 vocal settings. We've got a guitar setting on there. We've got a dynamic mic. We know that one of the problems with dynamic mics, good dynamic mics, is they need a lot of gain, and you're then very dependent on which manufacturer you buy from to get a gain stage. Why don't we do our own gain stage? So we've got effectively a gain lifting device inside this, which is a very high quality Class A mic preamp. It auto detects phantom power and boots it up if it's got phantom power.
That's
so
brilliant.
It works either way.
Right.
And when the phantom power's on, you get a little row of nice purple LEDs as well. We thought, okay, so we've got something that it behaves like a condenser. It sounds as good as a condenser when you're using it in that mode. We've got a really good dynamic mic. Why don't we put another 3rd class of mic in there as well? The other one's ribbon. Why don't we put a ribbon mic in there? So it hasn't got a ribbon element, but the dark setting on this sounds exactly like a good vintage ribbon microphone. And all your guys coming through today were like, wow, that sounds amazing. So
Right.
So you've got 3 mics in one, all those patterns, the built-in preamp, and if you give it a shake, you can feel the internal shock mount on it as well.
Oh, you can, yeah.
So
Yeah, that's cool.
So much innovation in this thing.
Yeah.
So
It's
much.
a super versatile microphone.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier, I did a video review of that,
Yeah.
and it does apply to all, so many different things that you want to put it in front of. It's going to sound great in all of them. You just have to choose the right setting.
Exactly.
It really
Yeah,
works great.
exactly.
So yeah, very cool. So what's next? Have you run out of ideas, or are there more ideas on the table?
No. We've got some stuff I can't talk about, obviously, as I'll get killed. Well, next we've got a very interesting project, which is going to turn heads. It's going to turn heads. I can't tell you too much about it, but it's going to be something that extends the panel quite a lot.
Okay.
Because people are saying what the mic is going to sound like.
Right.
And I can't reveal too much detail about it. That's on the kind of low end of stuff.
Right.
On the high end, we've got some incredible stuff going on. We're playing the long game with that. Our intention is to get this kind of low to middle end market, just do the best job we can of every kind of microphone group that people want, the ribbon and the tube, all that kind of stuff. Those will get done. I can't tell you in what order, but
Sure.
they will get done. But on the high end of stuff, we've already been working on really high end microphones for the entire 3 years that we've been doing all of the lower end stuff. And the ideas that we've got for those they're the space rockets.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that no company out there has ever touched. Completely novel materials, completely novel ways of recording sound. And when we finally hit the streets with those, which was a couple of years away, but it's coming.
Oh, that's great.
It's gonna absolutely rock the music industry. It'll be amazing to get that stuff out. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Now you set the expectation. So now you.
Oh yeah.
It's out there now. The anticipation is building.
We set a benchmark. We're producing $300 microphones that people are saying these sound like $3,000 mics. So what happens when we do a $3,000 mic? Right. It's going to have to be something pretty special.
Yeah, that's awesome. I can't wait.
Yeah.
That's going to be great.
Yeah, me too.
Well, thanks so much for coming in and telling us about the company and sharing some of the unique features and the unique design approaches that you've taken with these microphones. It really is exciting stuff.
Thank you, man.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Cheers. Thank you.
Great to have you here.
Thanks.
Come back
Thanks,
soon.
Mitch. Yeah, we'll do.
And thank you for joining me here for the Sweetwater Minute. I'm Mitch Gallagher.